At 23 years old, your passion for life knows no bounds. Your mind is wide open to challenges and a thirst for adventure. As a 23-year-old, you've got the world by the tail, and nothing can stop you. Except him. Mark William Roffel was 23 years old and didn't have a chance. On March 13, 1996, a drunk driver couldn't even read his speedometer. It read 150 kilometers an hour. The law failed Mark Roffel. The driver who killed Mark had no license, no insurance, and was double the legal blood alcohol limit. We advocate zero tolerance. Ask about the zero tolerance petition. We're collecting signatures to take to the House of Commons in hopes that the criminal code be changed. .08 is unacceptable. Help us get drunks off our roads. Call 604-671-5900 for information about zero tolerance, the new attitude on the street.
Hi, and welcome back to the channel. The law failed Mark. The Canadian law failed Mark twice. I'm Ken, and along with my wife Eileen, after we lost our oldest son Mark to a drunk driver in 1996, we headed across Canada to promote zero tolerance, no drinking and driving. After some research that we had done that showed that 68% of all Canadians have no idea what 0.08 is, or when you've reached 0.08. How do you know what your blood alcohol level is at after a couple of drinks? You don't. You don't know whether you're at 0.3, 0.5, 0.8. And I've heard every possible excuse under the sun. Oh, I can have a couple and I'm safe. I should be fine. Well, in this episode of The Canadian Law Failed Mark Twice, it's going to be raw. It's going to be unedited. I'm not going to be concerned about anybody's feelings, because I think once you've lost a child to a drunk driver, your feelings kind of go numb for a while until reality kicks in and you realize that your loved one is gone forever. So I am going to be frank and open and honest with you regarding my thoughts about drinking and driving. The Canadian law failed Mark twice. On the afternoon of March 13th, 1996, the drunk that killed Mark, from what we understand, was involved in an earlier alcohol-related accident. Was allowed to go, went home, stole his uncle's truck, drank some more beer, and at 8:30 that evening killed our son. His blood alcohol was double the legal limit. Mark was on his way back to White Rock, British Columbia. He was heading west on 16th Avenue, doing everything right. He had a license, Mark had insurance, didn't drink and drive, didn't do drugs. There were no drugs or alcohol in Mark's system at all. And at 8:30 that evening at that intersection, you know the drunk that I was just talking about? Well, he T-boned Mark and killed Mark instantly. That driver had a blood alcohol of double the legal limit in Canada. So the law failed Mark. The law could have kept that drunk off the road earlier that day, and Mark would still be with us. But we lost Mark, sadly and tragically, that evening on March the 13th to a driver who took Mark's choices away. The drunk had a choice. He didn't have to get behind the wheel of a vehicle and drive. He didn't have to go home and steal his uncle's truck and drink more beer. But that's the sad reality of drunks. They don't care. They absolutely don't care. They show no remorse. In fact, if you've ever met a repeat offender, you'll see what I mean. You'll soon hear what I mean. They absolutely have no regard for anyone else on the road. So with that attitude, my attitude is throw them in jail. I have no problem with that at all. I've had all kinds of suggestions as to what we could do with repeat offenders when it comes to impaired driving. Throw them in jail. I have no problem for an undetermined amount of time until they recognize that they have a problem with alcohol. It's plain and simple. They're killers. Drunk drivers are killers. The drunk that killed our son absolutely might as well have taken a loaded gun, walked down the street, and just started firing away, because when you get behind the wheel of a vehicle, it becomes your weapon, and you have no disregard for life at all. You throw everything out. So I say, with that attitude, to the repeat offender and to those who think it's okay or it's cool to drink and drive, I think we can stiffen up the laws. But in any event, I promised that I'd talk about the court case on this episode. So, after several months, we were beginning to wonder why we hadn't heard back from the RCMP regarding the charges against that driver that killed Mark. And after 6 months, I decided to go down to the Langley RCMP detachment and see if I could speak with Constable Pierre Leduc. He was the constable assigned to Mark's case. And I asked him what was going on. He suggested I talk to the Crown Counsel in New Westminster, which I did. And during my meeting with the Crown Counsel, he asked me if the Langley RCMP had told me anything regarding what was going on. And I said, we haven't heard anything. We've made numerous calls, and we've tried our best to find out what's going on. In any event, what happened that evening was they took Mark's body to Royal Columbian Hospital, and the drunk driver ended up in Royal Columbian Hospital as well. A 15-year veteran of the RCMP stationed in Langley took his blood sample that evening, but forgot to read him his rights. You heard that right. A 15-year veteran, a member of the RCMP and assigned in Langley, forgot to read the drunk his rights that evening. Took his blood sample. The hospital had the blood sample, but it could not be used in a court of law here in Canada. Technicality. That's the second strike against Mark. The law failed to keep the drunk off the road. The law, due to its silliness with technicalities, allows murderers to get off. Remember I said that drunk's a murderer? You never convince me that they're not. They injure and kill people. And unfortunately, we lost our son to the hands of an impaired driver. So the Crown Counsel couldn't charge him with impaired driving. So the best they could do was charge him with dangerous driving. So we sat in court for a week. The judge made his decision. He was tried by judge only, made his decision, and he was found not guilty. The Crown prosecutor tried their best to introduce alcohol into the case. They had the ambulance attendants who attended the scene that evening testify that they smelled alcohol in the guy's truck and all over him and everything, but there was nothing that they could do because of this one technicality. So the law failed Mark twice. So what happened? Well, the judge found him not guilty. We were shocked. Not guilty, and yet we had buried Mark. We lost our son, and that individual, 23-year-old irresponsible creep. I told you this was going to be raw and uncut. I'm not cutting that out. I'm leaving that in there. I've got harsher words, but he got off. Smugly, him and his father walked out of court and thought that that was going to be the end of it. So I'm a firm believer in karma. I think what goes around sometimes will come around, and it may not be in my lifetime, but hopefully he'll find his justice at the end of life, or maybe during the rest of his life. I'm not sure. But anyhow, he got off. So after the judge made his announcement, I stood up and I said, well, who killed my son? Immediately, 2 sheriffs came and grabbed me by the arms and hauled me out of the courtroom. And we're standing in the hallway, and one of the sheriffs said to me, you know, this is so sad. And I said, yeah, tell me about it. You know, the justice system is a joke in Canada when it comes to impaired drivers. And he said, no, that judge just got back on the bench after his 12-step or 10-step program. And I thought, wow. You know, I can't accuse the judge of being guilty, but he showed no remorse or absolutely no sympathy toward the parents that lost a son at the hands of a drunk driver. He knew the guy was drunk. He knew that his blood alcohol was double the legal limit, and yet they couldn't do anything. So anyhow, what did we do? We turned a negative into a positive. We did some research, found that a lot of Canadians have no idea what 0.08 is. So we thought, why not ask the House of Commons in Ottawa, the Canadian government, to get rid of the 0.08 in the sections of the criminal code that deal with impaired driving and make it zero tolerance, because everybody knows what zero tolerance is. And I'll pause here for a moment. I want you to understand that Eileen and I are not against drinking, because we think that alcohol plays a very vital role in our social societies. We're just dead set against impaired drivers. And remember, impairment begins with one drink. Yep, one drink. Alcohol is a sedative. Puts you to sleep. You know, I've had friends and casual acquaintances tell me during our campaign, and even today, oh, I'm okay to drink and drive after a couple of, I'm okay to have a couple of drinks and drive, and I'm fine. No, you're not. You're an idiot. I told you this was going to be uncut. You are an absolute idiot if in today's society you don't realize the perils you put other people in driving impaired on the road, because impairment begins with one drink. And yet we allow Canadians to have a blood alcohol of 0.05 up to 0.08, and away they go down the road, and they're absolutely bombed out of their minds. But you know, that doesn't change a lot of things. Back then I could come up with more adjectives to describe drunk drivers and those who support the idea of driving impaired, while the rest of the country, the rest of the world, and parts of Europe and parts of the US, zero tolerance is the norm. I mean, you know, you just don't dare get behind the wheel of a vehicle after having one or two drinks. And even friends and associates of people in Europe will make sure that their friend who's been drinking doesn't get behind the wheel of a vehicle. But what do we do here in Canada? Well, we've got this stupid law in the books that says you can have a blood alcohol of 0.08. So we mounted our zero tolerance campaign, went across the country, we collected signatures, we presented the House of Commons in Ottawa with 275,000 signatures on our petition. It was one of the largest petitions the House of Commons in Ottawa had ever seen. The gun control issue at that time drew 91,000 in support of gun control. Our zero tolerance campaign gathered 275,000 signatures. We were so fortunate to have our local MP, Member of Parliament, Randy White, on our side. He opened many doors across Canada for us during our campaign. He spoke with the Speaker of the House of Commons. We were allowed to park our big truck, and here's a picture of our big truck, right near the steps of the House of Commons. And we sat there for a couple of days getting signatures. We met a lot of politicians. We met a lot of visitors to the Parliament buildings in Ottawa who signed our petition. We even met senators, the highest chamber in the House, who came and signed our petition and supported zero tolerance. But it was not the will of the government at that time to make any changes to the sections of the criminal code dealing with impaired drivers. So they called an all-party committee together, and we all made presentations to this committee as to why we should change the law. And anyone interested in seeing the 0.08 disappear could make a presentation to the standing committee. And of course, our zero tolerance campaign was there. The Brewers Association was there. The distillers were there. The Restaurant Association, the hotel industry. And they didn't want to see any changes. They thought the law is fine just the way it was, to allow people to have a couple drinks and then get behind the wheel of a vehicle and go home. But during our presentation that we made to the House of Commons, if you Google Zero Tolerance Campaign Ottawa. You'll read all of our information. All of the information is online as to our presentation and the presentation of the other interested parties that didn't want to see any changes. And so one of the last comments I made to everyone in the room, all the politicians, how would you like to go home tonight and find that the pilot has a blood alcohol of 0.05? Well, of course, they all said, what? No way. And the airline industry practices zero tolerance. The trucking industry, most of it across Canada, promotes zero tolerance, no drinking and driving. In fact, if you're caught with alcohol or drugs in your system, you're gone. And so many other industries are far more responsible than the federal government here in Canada. And they tell their employees no drinking and driving. The airlines are probably the best. I mean, can you imagine getting on an airplane and the pilot's had 3 or 4 drinks and climbs on it and decides to take off well before the plane has made enough ground speed to get airborne? No. But yet we allow the ordinary citizen, anybody that wants to have 2 or 3 drinks, to climb behind the wheel of a 2,000-pound vehicle and try and aim it down the road, and hopefully they don't kill or injure anyone. Recall that I said when Mark was killed, on the average 3.1 Canadians a day were killed at the hands of an impaired driver. That doesn't include the amount that are injured. 3.1. Today, this is July 2023. Today, it's 4. On the average, 4 Canadians a day die at the hands of an impaired driver. Mr. and Mrs. Politician, we've been mad long enough. It's time to review the criminal code and look at the stats and come up with the conclusion, it's a logical one, that we need to get rid of the 0.08 and make it 0. There's too many ways to get home now. Uber, taxi, public transit, friend. 5th, you don't even have to drink and drive. Those are choices. Remember I said that the drunk that killed Mark? He took Mark's choices away, but he chose to drink and drive. Stupid. Dumb. And impaired drivers are still doing this today. On the average, 4 Canadians a day die at the hands of an impaired driver. That doesn't include those that are injured. Every day, some headlines across Canada point to an impaired driver. Or the local news media will follow an individual going into court, coming out of court, who killed someone 18 months ago, and it's finally coming to trial. And the individual is shown going in and out of court. And we wouldn't have to tie up our courts as bad as we do if we just got rid of zero tolerance. Or pardon me, if we got rid of the 0.08 and made it zero tolerance. I've had policemen tell me the budgets aren't there. We don't have enough policemen on the road. Well, the budgets are there. It's how you've assigned the budgets internally. Less emphasis on traffic. This is what you're going to get. People just don't see enough policemen on the road. So there's no visual clue as to, you know what, that's a clue I shouldn't be drinking and driving because there's the law. I think it's time we put the power of the law back into the hands of the police in Canada. You may think I'm rambling a bit from zero tolerance, but if you look at the charades on the side of the road that the police have to do when dealing with an impaired driver, it's amazing they even put their uniforms on. We have to simplify the process. But I know the police know that they get to court and there's a smart lawyer at $1,500 an hour or $5,000 an hour. It's going to try and get their client off or find some technicality. And in Mark's case, the technicality was the police. So you're battling human error as well as the law. So I think I've gone on long enough. I think you understand our position on zero tolerance, no drinking and driving. whether alcohol or impaired by drugs, just don't get behind the wheel of a vehicle and drive. So, before I end this episode, Eileen and I would like to publicly, by way of our YouTube channel, say thank you very much to Randy White for all of his support and love during our Zero Tolerance campaign that ran from 1997 to about 2000. Randy was phenomenal. Some people don't believe there are good politicians and they're only interested in themselves and not anybody else's interests, but Randy wasn't that way. Randy became a true unpaid member of our Zero Tolerance campaign. So Randy, thank you very much. I know you've put your time in as a member of Parliament in Ottawa, and I know that you're enjoying your retirement, and so from the bottom of our hearts, thank you very much. Also, to all of those who supported our campaign across Canada, thank you very much. The fight still continues. Remember, it's on the average, 4 Canadians a day die at the hands of Impaired Driver. I'd like to address one other issue before I say goodbye to you. We often get asked why we didn't put all of our effort into the MAD campaign, Mothers Against Drunk Driving. I'd thought about it at the time, and during the weeks following Mark's death, a couple of people from MAD knocked on our door, and they were looking for financial support. And I got talking to them, and I asked them, what's your position on drinking and driving? And the immediate response was, we promote responsible drinking and driving. And I had no idea what that meant. Responsible drinking and driving? I said, well, what about zero tolerance? No, we put all of our effort into educating the public on drinking responsibly and then driving. I thought, wow, that's your position. Mothers Against Drunk Drivers, and impairment begins with one drink, and tons of universities and different studies have shown that. And so I wished them well on their door knocking, and thought, no, that's not for us. I'm a firm believer in zero tolerance, not drinking responsibly, like having 1 or 2 drinks. You know, because what is it, a small drink, a big drink? Is it 8% alcohol, 6% alcohol, 11.7% alcohol in that glass of wine? What is it? Well, they can't answer that. And yet they send their troops out banging on doors talking about responsible drinking, here in Canada at least. So I decided that we were just going to go solo on our own and do the best we could with the resources that we had, along with the support of family and friends, and move forward with zero tolerance here in Canada in memory of Mark and others. So during our campaign, we met a lot of young adults, I would say 16 to maybe 24, 25 years of age, and they had a new attitude. It's not cool to drink and drive anymore. We met some youngsters at a high school in Saskatchewan who were phenomenal. They supported us, they signed our petitions, and they totally convinced us that they knew that it's not cool to drink and drive. No amount of alcohol is safe. So zero tolerance takes the guesswork out of how much is too much. Is it 2 drinks, 3 drinks, 4 drinks? Well, zero tolerance eliminates all of that. But anyhow, thank you very much for watching this episode. There's our story. The drunk driver got off, and the Canadian law failed Mark not once but twice. First time by not keeping that drunk who had been in an earlier alcohol-related accident off the road. The second time, the criminal justice system failed Mark. Technicality, they say. I still don't understand it. You had the blood alcohol in his sample. I don't know why there was no way they could introduce that into court. So, we're all losers. Oh, there was a winner, the drunk. He walked out scot-free, him and his dad smugly walking out of the courthouse. So, anyhow, we still continue the fight. I trust that you will help protect those you love and other people, whether it's in Canada or the United States or other parts of the world, by promoting zero tolerance, no drinking and driving. And if you have an opportunity to talk to your local representative for government to convince them that zero tolerance saves lives, please do that. It's a coal train. I forgot to mention, they practice zero tolerance too. Yep. You can't get a job here in Canada with any of the railway companies and expect to be able to go to work with a blood alcohol of 0.4 or 0.5. It's not going to happen. Zero tolerance. So I'll end it here with that train going by, and trust that you'll talk to your representatives about repeat offenders and zero tolerance. So thank you for watching this episode. I wish you all a wonderful day, and stay safe, everyone. Thank you.